I'm James Rojas, and this is Off the Record. And sitting with me is Josh Cuadra, a singer, musician, and all-around good guy. Josh, thank you so much for sitting down with me and to talk about your album.
No problem. This is awesome.
I think, when was the last time we saw each other? It must have been in 2013 because that's when I left for Sacramento.
Yeah, I was thinking it was quite a while ago.
Yeah. Well, I'm really am happy and excited that you are sitting down. Can we just talk about this album, surroundings and collections? I knew that you sang and you performed, and I've seen clips on Instagram and everything, and I knew you were a good singer. But when I saw that you posted this on Facebook, that your album was on Spotify, I recently just got Spotify, so I figured, hey, I might as well listen to it, and I was blown away. And I'm not even trying to exaggerate. I love this album, and not only are the lyrics, I think they're amazing. I think they're very poetic, and the music, the instruments, but the production value is off the charts. I absolutely love it. How long did it take you to put this together?
I started working on it immediately after the first one came out. I actually started working on it like right before the first one came out, which was, last year, August of last year. Right.
And that's the Floating Through.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Floating Through album. And one thing I love about just music in general is that it's very open to interpretation. So one song or one album may have a message for one person, and then it may be completely different for somebody else. And for me at least, well, let me first ask you, what is the theme of this album? Then I'll try to see if my idea of it fits yours.
Oh, gosh. I mean, I'm not really thinking about the album. When I put it together, I'm not thinking of it in terms of like lyrical themes or poetic themes or anything like that. For me, it's more of like a feeling. I want each of the songs to have a particularly good feeling. I love a lot of '60s production, and I like a lot of I'm influenced by a lot of '60s singer-songwriters, and when I put the record together, I wanted it to feel like those records, as far as like the double-tracked vocals and the electric guitar on top of the acoustic guitar and the flat-wound bass, and that's probably getting a little like technical maybe, but so when I put it together, I think of all those things, and it's really, really awesome when I hear people say like, oh man, when I was listening to this, it made me feel nostalgic. It made me feel like I was listening to something my grandma would listen to, and for some people that might be like, oh, that's lame, but like I love it.
I totally understand what you're saying, because when I listened to it, it took me back. Yeah, it reminds you of the classics of I think the strongest or the closest band that I kind of relate this album to, or your style to, is the Beatles, and I think that's a huge compliment, of course, and it really felt like if you were listening to this, if you found this album in the glass house at the record store and you pulled it up and put it on the record, I think many people wouldn't be surprised, or would be surprised that it came out last year in 2017 and not in 1965.
Yeah, that's great. Like that's what I want, for these projects, these first two records. Like that's the territory that I wanted to mine. I wanted it to feel like something that would fit right next to like like an ELO or like a John Lennon solo record. I'm not trying to compare myself to that, but I wanted to approximate what I was feeling as much as I could about those records, and like kind of do my own version of those. So. And
well, for me at least, the theme, or again, music and albums are up to interpretation, I think to many people, and what I took out of this album was growing or getting older, kind of moving forward, and some of those songs in particular that I think really landed that message were 32 and Careful Decider. I love those two. I love the whole album, but those two songs in particular, I absolutely love. And just speaking about the song 32, what was the idea behind that? Because for me, it kind of feels like a person is kind of stuck in a rut, and they're kind of going through the motions, and they are trying to get past that. Or what? When you were writing it, what was going through your mind?
That particular song was like many of the songs on the record, they're collections of different pieces of songs I had written throughout the year, right? And my sort of technique for songwriting is I'll write one song that's about 30, 40 seconds, right? I'll write another one that's maybe 10 seconds, write another one that's 20. And if I feel like there is a theme between all of these different things, I'll put them all together, you know? And I'll be like, okay, that fits with that, that fits with that. And when it comes time to finish the song, it's like a mosaic. I sort of paste them all together in a way that sounds good, you know? And for that particular song, yeah, there were pieces of songs that I had written throughout the year that fit that theme that you're talking about. That whole like being stuck in a rut. I kind of touched on that in the last record too. I think the last song on the first record is sort of also mining the same sort of emotional territory. And it's kind of funny that that's the first song on that record, because it's like, it's sort of bridging together. You know, if you listen to them at the same time, back to back, it's like, you know, part one and part two.
Is that self-reflective?
Yeah. This particular record is very, I guess, it sounds cliche, but it's probably very personal. You know, it's funny when I write this stuff and I'm like, oh, I'm a pretty private person, and I don't really tell people a whole lot about what's going on in my head or my life, but it's all there on like the records. And so if anyone wants to know what's going on, they could probably just find out.
And this one, the other song that really related to me a lot was Careful Decider, and the verse that you have, I dozed off and now I'm a little bit older. Now I feel the weight on my shoulders twice as bad. And I think that's a common feeling for a lot of people when they grow up. Yeah, when you're a kid, you have very little responsibilities. And then when you start growing up and that weight of life or responsibility is on your shoulders, and you really do feel that, I don't want to say it's a clock, or like a ticking clock, but I really related to that song a lot. Do you feel like you're growing older? I mean, a lot of people say, you know, years, they seem to be going by much faster. Mm-hmm. Like, I think, you know, when you're a kid, summer feels like 5 months, and then now summer feels like 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's probably one of my favorite songs on the record, just because it felt the most personal of all of them. It felt the most true. I felt like I was like doing the most honest songwriting in that particular one, and you definitely picked up on exactly what I was feeling when I was creating it and writing it and recording it. And not only was I proud of the lyrical content of that, but just the production value of it was exactly what I was wanting to convey to the listener. And I'm really glad you like that song, because I wanted that song to be something that people connected to.
And again, no joke, this album has been on repeat for like the past week and a half when I started listening to it. And your songs are kind of different because most of them don't have a chorus. Yeah. And I think it's very, like I mentioned before, very poetic. And as opposed to other songs that kind of have you can kind of see or kind of expect where the structure of the song is going to go. Mm-hmm. But how you change it when you say certain words or certain verses, again, I compare it to poetry.
Yeah, one of the main reasons for that, there's probably two reasons for that, and it goes back to what I mentioned before about the structure or how I put the songs together. They're culled from many different songs, like the little vignettes that I do, 30 seconds, 20 seconds. And when it comes together, I feel like I want to create songs that are nice and concise and don't repeat, you know. And, you know, I feel like I want the listener to feel like they can listen to a song and not expect it to be like repetitive. And I don't know, that's something that I have always done, piecing together songs and hoping that it isn't sort of a throwaway, I guess. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when I write the songs, I like, I'll maybe go in a direction, not specifically lyrically, but like melodically. I'll be like, oh, what fits this song next in this line? And even though I'm thinking I'm not piecing these songs together lyrically, there eventually a lyrical theme does pop up.
The lyrics are probably the main reason why I keep repeating the album, because every time I listen to another song again, I pick up another. I went through all your songs and wrote down all the verses. I'm not sure if it's already posted online. That would have made it much easier.
That'd be great. But please send those to me because I need to put that online.
But I loved being able to. When you first hear the songs, they sound very nice. They sound very good to the ear, very smooth, and some are very energetic. Some change direction or change tone, and then when listening it a second time, and I was writing down the words, and then piecing together what I think the song is about. It's great. I can't keep saying enough how much I love this album.
Thank you very much.
Is there a change or a change in the process between creating the first album and the second album?
Yes, not like songwriting wise, but production wise. The first one I did completely, I did all the instruments by myself. I had one producer working on that one. And for the next one, I felt like I wanted to mix it up a little bit with some different producers and have some friends help me out on the instrumentation. And I did that, and I worked with like 3 really awesome dudes on this, on Surroundings and Collections. And just having other people to bounce ideas off of was just awesome, because when you're working on one thing all by yourself, it gets a little like, what's the word?
You kind of get a tunnel vision, right? Or
yeah. There's no one really to bounce any ideas off of. You kind of shut everything out and just like, I'm doing it my way. And that's what I wanted to do for the first one, because I'd never created an album, and I wanted it to just be exactly the way I wanted it to be. For this one, I let people sort of criticize it a little bit. And
is that tough? Because I know when I'm, an example, working on a report or working on the podcast, and I have in my mind how I want it to go or how I perceive it to be the final product, and then you kind of bounce it off ideas. You let someone listen to it, and they give a suggestion, and they're like, "Yeah, that's good, but mine's better." Or even you have to kind of admit and like get rid of your ego and say, "That's actually a much better idea. I'm gonna steal that or go with that."
Yeah, it takes a little bit of time. You need to like kind of snap out of that like instant feeling of being offended, And when I was working on one particular song, the guy who was helping me record it, he was like, "Hey, this bass line's not working. Like, it sounds all over the place. It's not very good, right?" And I was like, "Oh, what? Right? What are you talking about? It's going on the record."
I'm an artist.
Yeah. And then, but I had to sort of accept it because I respected him, right? And I know that he was a great musician, and I was like, okay, maybe I should pay attention. So we left that day without having completed the bass line, and then he's like, "Come back tomorrow. We'll see what happens." I go home that day, work on another bass line, come back, play it for him, and he's like, "That's it. There we go. Good job."
Yeah.
And that was sort of the theme for this sort of record, which was... even another producer I work with, he was like, I don't think you should put as many harmonies on this particular part as you want to do, because I'm very influenced by like the Beach Boys and the Beatles, and there's all different manners of harmonies and all different sorts of verses, but I needed to learn to sort of like pull back a little bit, so that it didn't sound like, polyphonic spree or whatever.
And that actually reminds me, like, how do you walk that balance of, I guess, again, it's clear that you have an appreciation for the classics, and how do you show that appreciation while also not copying like the Beatles or the Beach Boys or John Lennon? Like, how do you define that?
Gosh, I think just
Because you want to make a new sound for yourself. You want to be, yourself. You're like an individual and have your style be its own unique thing. And I could imagine it could be like, man, this is a good beat, and then you realize you listen to another album decades ago, like, dang it, that's where I got it from. That was stuck in my head.
That's literally happened before, and instead of I used to get upset because we're like, dang, like that, not that I felt like I was copying it, but I'm like, man, they did that already. Damn it.
That was really good.
Right? But instead, I'm more like, okay, I'm on the right track. Like, I'm doing exactly what I want to do, which is be able to create songs the way these guys created songs, and I don't know, some people might think that it's like, oh, the past has already been done, you should move on. But I kind of let go of that notion of, oh, maybe I shouldn't, retread whatever waters these guys were treading on, because they did the same thing. They were being influenced by guys who literally sued them for sounding the way they sounded, and it's all part of it's all influence. It's just being influenced, and whatever you write, if you try to write an original song with all of your influences in mind, it's not going to sound exactly like those influences, because everyone's different. Everyone has their own particular story that they need to put on a particular beat or a particular chord, and if that chord is the same chord that Ray Davies from the Kinks used, it's not going to be the same story that he told. It's
And speaking about that influence, let's talk about your inspirations. I know you mentioned like John Lennon and the Beach Boys. Did each album, 1 and 2, have a different artist that was kind of not modeled behind, but that you heard a song or an album decades ago, and you kind of like that? Okay, that's a good, I don't know, setup. I'm musically ignorant of the terminology, but I'm trying to just say, what are the inspirations? Were there inspirations specifically for each album?
Not particularly. I think the reason why it does remind people of things is because I listened to all of that stuff so much for so many years before I even started to write music, that once I started to write music, it just was sort of a natural, organic thing that stuff sounded like ELO, Simon and Garfunkel, the Kinks. I listened to that stuff for years, all throughout middle school and high school, and I started writing my first song my first year of college. And when people first heard it, they're like, oh, that sounds like an old record, and I'm like, oh, thank you very much. And it wasn't anything that I was consciously doing. It was, it's like language. If you hang out around people who have a particular accent, you're going to pick that up over time. You won't even think about it.
I totally get that, because I'm no singer by any stretch of the imagination, but when I do sing songs that I love country music, it may be a surprise or a shock, but I love country music. Today's country poppy music, not so much, but the classics and even 90s country. But growing up with that music, listening to it almost every day, every hour, whenever I find myself singing another song in a different genre, completely different genre, I'm told that I'm singing it as a country song, or I'm singing like a rock song or a jazz song or anything like that. But when I'm singing it, it comes off a little country, and I think that's the same thing.
I want to hear your version.
No, you do not.
Of "Fly Me to the Moon" by Frank Sinatra. Maybe with like a country twang.
Little twang.
Yeah.
Then that's not going to sell any albums.
Would you like to guest on the next album?
No. If you want people to start listening, you did not want me to be a part of the album. I would just butcher it. No, but I totally get that, where like you don't intend to, or you don't plan it to be that way, but it comes off just because that's how you grew up and that's what your ear is accustomed to. Yeah,
that's exactly what happened. And I don't mind. I actually like it. I like that whatever seeped into my head all those years came out the way it came out, because if anything, I love paying homage to those guys and love doing it.
Well, let's talk about your background. Obviously, you've been a musician, you've been playing instruments for a while now. Mm-hmm. Can we talk about when was the first time you picked up any instrument?
Probably the first time I picked up an instrument and actually decided that I wanted to do stuff with it was I was in I think I was in middle school, and my brother is a teacher, and he was living with us at the time, and when he would go and teach in the day, and for whatever reason I'd be off of school or whatever, he would leave his guitar in the room. And when I was younger, there was like this sort of unwritten rule, like don't touch the guitar because it's like expensive and beautiful and we don't want you to get your dirty fingers on it. And so I didn't really touch it, but when he was gone, I was like, oh, I'm gonna get in there.
Yeah. So it's the forbidden apple that you want to bite.
So he'd be gone, I'd get in there and I'd play it and would try to find chords that I liked, sounds that I liked to hear, and I would try to create. I didn't even know what chords were, or notes or anything like that. I just sort of put my fingers on the frets, and whatever sound came out that I liked, I just kept repeating those, and I would practice those every day. And then he would come home, and I'd put it back, and repeat that daily.
Did you ever catch on that it was moving slightly every time you left?
Well,
when he came back.
No, I think in my head I thought that it was like more forbidden than it actually was, because my brother's like super cool. I don't think he would have been like, "What are you doing?" I'm pretty sure he would have loved it. And now he's complete supporter, and he's not. I think if I told him then, "Oh, I'm playing your guitar when you're at work," I don't think he would have been mad at all.
Yeah. So your brother is supportive. I'm assuming your family is.
Yeah.
It's funny because I watched. I'm not sure if you've seen it. The movie Coco.
Yeah, I saw it.
I loved that movie, and it's funny because obviously in his case, not any spoilers or anything, but his family, the boy, they hate music. They shun it. They want to get rid of it, and they want to focus on their shoe factory.
Yeah.
But it appears obviously that you have a lot of support.
I do. Yeah.
And did they see, or where did they see you going with this?
I mean, my parents. I feel like, when they see that I'm like playing shows and releasing records, they're like, "Oh my gosh, he's gonna be famous," right? But like, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of people doing what I do, and I try not to get a big head about exactly what I'm doing. Like, I play songs, I record them, I release them, and people like them, but I'm not like thinking to myself, oh man, like if one guy said he liked it, I'm going to be in Taylor Swift territory in like 3 months.
The next Justin Bieber.
Yeah.
But one thing I love about, the music industry, just like every other industry nowadays, is completely changed just because it is easier for people like you and I to get our stuff out there. Back then, you had to, have a contract with a studio. You had to pay for all this equipment or pay for the production value and all this and all these other things. Nowadays, it's at your fingertips.
It is. It's really great. Like when I first started recording, talk about being supportive. Like it was my first year of college, and I felt like I needed to record. Like something was telling me, this is something that you need to do. You need to get some sort of recording device. I don't know how you're going to get it, but you're going to get this thing and you're going to start recording, right? Because I had like really cheap little tape recorders, like little cassette tapes where you put the tiny little cassette in, and I would like sing into that, and I'm like, this is bad. The fidelity is so awful. I'm like, I need to get something nice. And I asked my parents, I was like, hey, is it all right if I get like a Tascam 8-track, for recording? And they were like, okay, I guess, because I don't really ask for much. So I think probably when I asked for that, they were like, okay, I guess. And they did, and I got it, and I just, used that thing for years, and sort of gave me the confidence to continue doing what I was doing, because I would play the recordings that I did on that to friends and family, and they're like, this is pretty cool. I think you should continue. And, slowly my confidence kept building, and started doing it on other programs and getting software and stuff.
So your brother is, as you mentioned, a little musically inclined. He obviously plays a guitar. Are your parents also?
Yes.
Yeah, they also play?
Yes. My dad was in a band in the 60s called Art and the Fabulons. And they were active in the East LA area. And, they played shows with like the Midnighters, who are like legendary. And, they were contemporaries with like Cannibal and the Headhunters. And, who else? Little Ray. And, my dad talks a lot about that era of his life. And I know, and I could understand why, because it sounded like a very exciting time, to be a part of that scene. So yeah, he was very much a part of that. So, when he hears the stuff I do, he's like, oh, this is great. It sounds like, stuff that he was either covering or listening to at the time. And my mom, the same way. She sang. She also was in like a little vocal duo with her sister called Pat and Lynn. So,
do they have their any recordings like saved that you can listen to?
They exist, but they've been lost to time somewhere. No. Yeah, I don't know where they are. I think they're with like other band members, but they're not in my hands, unfortunately.
One thing I want to add to that is because your parents are musically inclined and they have that background too. Obviously, the support came along with it when you showed interest. Mm-hmm. For me, I entered the world of broadcasting, and no one else in my family has done it. And while I'm asking them, hey, I'm going to buy this recorder, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to take this class, or I'm going to go into this this is the field that I want to pursue. Yeah. My parents. My dad, his background is in law enforcement. My mom, nursing and business, and so they have no, I have their full support. Yeah. But they're kind of on that. Well, we don't know what you're doing, but we trust you because again, because my dad is in law enforcement, and he was able to give my sister advice, and she joined the department, and cool. he's able to go, okay, these are the 1 through 20 steps that you're gonna do if you want to succeed. Mm-hmm. For me, I'm like, oh, this is what I want to do. They can't contribute anything to it. They're like, okay, well, we trust that you know what you're talking about. Whatever you need, we support you fully. We don't understand it, but we'll be there for you. Yeah. But that's great that they had the background also, so it just kind of fit together.
It was great. It was very, very organic. And, they supported. They still support me. They're very loving, and it's great.
When was your first performance in front of an audience? And when you did perform, were they original songs or were they covers?
When I performed for the first time, I believe it was October of 2010. And the reason why I performed was because I had started, I started writing songs about 2 years prior to that. And I had never performed anywhere. And I was like, it's something I've always wanted to do, but I was too scared to do it. And I was going on a trip to Boston, and I had never been on a plane before. And I kid you not, my inspiration for performing was, man, if I die in this plane, it is going to be a bummer to never say that I performed live any of my songs. So I literally that day, even though I was super scared, I was like, I'm going to go, I'm going to perform before I die on this plane in Boston. And I did it, and I didn't think that I would like it. I just thought I would be super scared and I'd never do it again. But I actually enjoyed it and ended up, loving it and trying to do it as much as I could. And, I went to that particular open mic like every single week, and was something that I felt like I could continue doing for a long time. So.
And how big was the crowd?
The crowd, it was actually an all right crowd. It was a very popular open mic in Claremont that used to happen every week at the Press. And it doesn't happen every week anymore, but it was very popular at the time. And so it was kind of intimidating to go out there and see a lot of people that I had enjoyed for a few years going to that open mic. But the reaction was good, so I kept doing it.
After, you're performing more and more and you're building your confidence, do you kind of see yourself in the shoes of the people you listen to, like musicians before, because they had to start somewhere too, and they probably, most likely, they all had the same feelings of when they first performed and getting over those nerves or the jitters. And in myself, just looking at all my colleagues, in broadcasting, and realize, looking at them now, 20 years into their career, and they're pros, and they're at the top of their game, and then I have to remind myself, like, I think I'm pretty decent. They haven't fired me yet, so I think that's good. But I could see, like, obviously no one starts out perfect, and you build up to that, and so then that gave me more confidence. Like, okay, I kind of see where I'm at right now. That person was probably at that same state at some point in their lives, and they overcame it, and they're succeeding very well. And were you able to do that after you got more performances under your belt?
Yeah, because I would record them either on like my phone, or I would have someone else record them, and I would sort of pick out the things I liked or didn't like. And I guess it's like an athlete when you like go back and listen to tape or watch tape of like your performance. I sort of did that, and I made sure that whatever I was projecting out to the audience would be something that I can go home and be like, that was a good performance, right? Because I put the work in to make that a good performance. So, and then also, as I continued to do that, and I kept getting criticism from people, even after doing my own like personal criticism myself, like other people would be like, oh, I think you should do this when you perform, and you don't do enough of this. Can you do that? Or cut that out, because that's terrible, right?
Yeah. I've heard that one a lot.
Yeah. Get rid of it.
Yeah.
So I definitely, it was a process. It was a process, even, trying to get advice from people who performed. Because I used to have this problem with like not enunciating clearly into the mic whenever I would sing, and I would be like, I get this criticism all the time, like, oh, I couldn't really hear what you said. But it's all a process, because then you get advice from people who are fantastic stage performers, and that's kind of what I wanted to be. Yeah.
When I listened to some of my first recordings of back in college, or really anything when I first started, I literally cringe when I hear this stuff. Do you have the same feeling when you're listening back to those first performances or first recordings?
Yes, on both. I'll listen to old recordings I did on that Tascam, and I can't believe I even thought that it was good.
It's humbling. It's very humbling to revisit that.
Yeah, and I'll be like, good Lord, like that is just embarrassing. It's just embarrassing. But those recordings sort of like, when you see where you were and where you've where you've got to, you feel good about whatever process that you took to get there. So.
And when you're putting together the album or putting together a song, I'm always curious about this, because when the average listener, and the same thing goes for, again, in the broadcasting world, the average listener, when they hear the final product, they hear one complete thing, but they don't know all the little pieces that were plugged in, or the fading out, the fade in, fade out.
Yeah.
Or the overlapping of sound. What's that process like? Because I can't imagine, because I hear songs that have like seemingly 10 plus instruments that are playing over each other. Like, do you have that in your mind of exactly what note or what instrument is going to hit at certain points? Because that has to be for one song alone, let alone an album, but for one song alone, there has to be a lot of thinking or planning.
I don't know how it is for other musicians, but for me, like, my personal process is I go in and I write the entire song on an acoustic guitar. I go in and when it's the initial raw form of the recording is this me and an acoustic guitar. And then I listen to that a few times, and think about what I want to put over that. And usually it's the electric guitar that comes in after. And that's pretty simple. I just sort of mimic the chords that I was playing on the acoustic guitar, but I try to maybe throw a little bit more flair on it. If I want to hear a particular chord a little bit louder, maybe I'll emphasize it in the electric guitar. So it gives it a little bit more power. And then I'll throw the bass on there. And that takes a little bit more time to figure out what I want to hear. But it just takes repeated listening. For me, it takes repeated listening to the raw acoustic vocal performance. And then, in your head, you're thinking like, oh, okay, I want the bass line to go boom, 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 or, and then you just go in there and do it, plug it in and play it.
And there has to be a balance too, because I think a lot of people can be carried away or get carried away by adding more and more and more, and then you just have this hunk of meat when you can just kind of trim the fat. Yeah. Is that a problem, trying to hold back and reserve yourself?
Yes, because sometimes I'll have the issue where I'll listen to something that I've done, a particular passage or a verse. I'll be like, man, this needs to be stronger somehow. And I'll just keep putting acoustic guitar over harmony, over two basses, and maybe put a synth, or like just do all this stuff. And it just sounds ridiculous, And I had one particular guy who was helping me record say, it doesn't need it, And that was sort of an eye-opener, to have someone say like, you should just not do that, It's getting a little too overblown. So
simpler is better sometimes.
Yeah. What's the word? I don't know where I heard it from, but I sort of think about it every once in a while when something like that happens, where something sounds too overblown. It's like, it's not what you put into the record, it's what you don't put in. So, yeah.
I think one thing that I always think about when something has too much fat, I always think about the Star Wars, the original trilogy, when George Lucas goes back and adds the new edition and just adds a lot more aliens or things walking past the screen, and it takes away from the actual shot of it takes you out of the movie. And I think there's that fine line of will this add to the song, or will this just kind of ruin it for the listener?
Are you telling me you didn't like the Sebulba-looking creature walking through Jabba's palace?
Oh,
This interview is over.
my God. No, I mean, that's kind of true, because you can add, because people, in George Lucas's case, he may think he's adding to the experience, where in my humble opinion, it kind of takes it away. But I thought your songs were, again, they're very nice to the ear. They're very pleasing to the ear. Mm-hmm. And again, I've been, like I mentioned before, this album has been on repeat, and I haven't gotten tired of it. Probably will next week. No, but like,
it's totally fine.
No, but you listen to it, and each song, there isn't a weak song. There isn't a weak song, I don't think.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I work really hard to make sure whatever is on the album is something that is something that you can continue listening to, I think that's why there aren't a whole lot of choruses in there, because in my mind, I think it'll change, maybe, but in my mind, like, having the multiple choruses is just filling up time for an opportunity to put another cool, different verse in the song, And I think that approach maybe lends itself to re-listening to the song, because a particular verse or a particular line in a song only happens once, and you don't get it again, and you don't get that repetition again in the song, and you have to listen to it again if you want to hear it. So I'm really glad that you like that aspect of it, I guess being able to revisit it.
Yeah, and speaking about how not every song has a repeating chorus, like there are some songs that I will love or like just because it has a nice chorus. It has an amazing chorus that's good to the ear, but everything else is kind of like subpar. But yeah, here I think Back, where is it? Back in My Mind has that repeating chorus, Evil and Longing.
That's probably the only, I think there's like maybe 2 songs in this one that actually have some sort of chorus involved.
Yeah, but every other song, they don't need a chorus. And that's what I like, the way you structure a lot of it. And can I put you on the spot? And can you perform one of your songs?
Oh, okay. I thought you were going to, can I put you on the spot and then ask me a question?
Oh, no. No.
It's like, I'm ready. Whatever he's going to have.
What's this trap? Yeah. Would you mind?
Yeah. Let me grab this. This is 32. Be like it.
32, you're restless but in time you feel the same as you did when you were you. Science fits and your pessimism fades. You feel the blame if you do what I do. Let him go by the wishing well. Followed him down so I can be sure he's safe. Collecting and racing thoughts. Followed him down again. And I've never been this motivated. I've never been this bold. Never thought I'd have to be before today. Previously indicated that I needed time. Never thought the tide would be this low again. I wanted to be in the dark in the night. I wanted to go through the middle of the day. And he goes, 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 and he goes. I wanted to be in the morning by the post. I wanted to be there the most, so it's close. And he goes, 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 and he goes.
Very good.
Thank you.
Again, that song really stands out to me, and I think that obviously was the intent of the album, the intent of the song, and knocking out of the park.
Thank you very much.
Do we know of any time you'll be performing next, or where can people find you, listen to you?
Let's see. Don't know where I'm going to be performing next, but yeah, you could find me on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play. I think any of those services will probably have me on there. I use this great service called TuneCore, and so I want to give them a shout out. They always help me out with whatever I need as far as like online distribution. So yeah, it's on Bandcamp. What else? Apple Music. So yeah.
Are you in the middle of working on the next album?
Not in the middle of it, at the very start of it. Yeah, I have a couple of songs that I really want to get into a studio and work out with some other band members, so I think it'll be really fun. I think the next album is going to be a little more band-oriented than this one was. On this album, I only had help on one track, which was Comfortable. The rest of the album I did completely on my own. But the next one will have more musical contributions from other people. So.
Perfect. Josh Cuadra, thank you so much.
Right.
Would you mind playing us out with another song of your choice?
Sure, yeah. I'll do the acoustic version of Comfortable.
Comfortable, are the thoughts that are replies to all the motions that I've waited for. Tangible, physically removed from all the actions that I did before. and it was reversible. All the things that we have thrown and all the things that we have planned to do. Piecing together all the things that we were saying before, and all of a sudden, all the pain had seemed to go away. Relinquishing my past, following all the dreams I thought would last. Think I'm being too tough on myself. Telescopic mind, being agreeable till I'm blind. Think I'm being too tough on myself. Oh, hey. Telescopic mind, being agreeable till I'm blind. Think I'm being too tough on myself. Oh, hey.